Hi everybody, so this stuff, aluminium, it's an amazing material, it truly is. I mean, we're a bit blasé about it because we use it for stuff like this, cooking foil and drinks cans. We're so used to it, we probably don't think about it much, but it was actually only discovered in the mid-19th century by Hans Christian Ørsted, who separated it from alum, which is incidentally where it gets its name from, using mercury salts. And it was so expensive when it was first found that it was used as jewellery. Napoleon had a set of cutlery that he used to take with him on campaign made of aluminium just to impress everybody. These days, of course, we mass manufacture it using electrolysis and it's made in the megaton. It's one of the cheapest metals there is. Aluminium's about $1 a pound, as is zinc. Copper's about $3 a pound and lithium's somewhere like $26 a pound. So it's one of the cheapest metals, it's one of the most used and it's one of the most abundant. And the price of aluminium, of course, is really factors in the energy cost of producing it. So when people say it's a bit expensive and energy intensive, well, yes it is, but then lots of things are, and the price is already factored in the price of the aluminium. It's so cheap because we produce so much of it, and it's usually produced pretty near where the electricity supply is also produced, like at nuclear power plants and hydroelectric dams. But the fact remains, it is an astonishing material, and it's one of those metals that is incredibly reactive. We don't really appreciate it because it's so reactive it almost immediately forms an aluminium oxide coat over the top of it, which is unreactive, and that protects the rest of the metal. But if you can remove the oxide coating, of course it's very dramatic. And I'm sure everybody's seen this, where you put a piece of aluminium in some sodium hydroxide and say, hey look, the sodium hydroxide is attacking the aluminium. Well, sort of. What it's actually doing is attacking the aluminium oxide coating, and that strips it bare so the aluminium can react with the water. And of course, as it reacts with the water, what it does is gives off a tremendous amount of heat, and more interestingly, a tremendous amount of hydrogen, because aluminium reacts with water to form hydrogen. Not only do we get the production of the chemicals there and the hydrogen we might want in order to burn something off, there is also a current formed and heat. Now let me demonstrate that current to you. Okay, so what I've got here is a stainless steel pot with the same potassium hydroxide solution in it and a little piece of aluminium. The aluminium is clipped to a motor and the other side of the pot is clipped to the motor as well. So the two electrodes are the sides of the pot and the aluminium. Now if I dip that aluminium in my potassium hydroxide solution and give that a chance to get going, there we go. We are now producing electrical energy, and it produces a fair amount of power actually, depending on the amount of surface area of aluminium that's exposed. The thickness of aluminium will give its duration, and of course the surface area of the corresponding electrode. Now at the same time as producing that electrical energy, it's also producing the hydrogen, and it produces a considerable amount of heat. Of course, sodium hydroxide isn't the only thing that will do that. Acids will do it, as Ørsted found mercury will do it, though not many people want to muck around with mercury these days. And gallium will also do it, and putting an electric charge to blow the oxide off the surface will all do it. And they all do the same thing. They get rid of the oxide coating so the aluminium is nice and bare and the water can reach it and react with it. And of course that's of huge interest, because when the water reacts with the aluminium to form aluminium oxide, it also releases hydrogen, and hydrogen is what everybody's after. Aluminium can form the basis of a hydrogen on demand system. Now if I were able to do that and I just burnt the hydrogen in a normal internal combustion engine, took a 350-mile round trip, it would cost me more or less $60 in the price of the aluminium at current metals prices. If I had to do that using a normal fuel, then here in the UK that would cost me in the region of $56 to take exactly the same trip. Now of course there would be differences because aluminium isn't as energy dense as fuel, so the aluminium would weigh more, about the same as another passenger, so nowhere near what an electric car battery would cost, but it would take up about the same space as the fuel tank in order to do that journey. Of course, as I said, we fed this straight into an internal combustion engine, and internal combustion engines at the best are around about 30–35% efficient on current road cars. If we changed and used a fuel cell, well, fuel cells are sort of between 40 and 60% efficient, with expectations of them getting up to 80% efficient. And we also said we just burnt the hydrogen, we threw away the electricity that generates, which is not inconsiderable, and the heat that it generates. All of this is why the drive to hydrogen is so attractive to people. What's holding it back are the problems with generating hydrogen currently, which is done through cracking hydrocarbons, and then the storage and transportation of hydrogen and using the hydrogen on board because it has to be pressurized and cooled. And of course, hydrogen has a terrible habit of exploding, as things like the Hindenburg disaster show us. And that's why hydrogen on demand systems, that is where you generate the hydrogen in the car, are so attractive because they solve so many problems. That is the generation, transportation, storage and refueling of a hydrogen car, and it brings the hydrogen vehicle very much nearer to a cheap and cost-effective realization. Now, there are a few ways of doing this, that is creating a hydrogen on demand system, but there are two really interesting ways that I'm aware of. The first one's very well known, and the second one, for some reason, is almost completely forgotten. Now, the first one uses that gallium-aluminium interaction that we looked at earlier in this video, and I think the first paper on this came out in something like 1976, but it was picked up by Purdue University and brought out in 2007 as a very serious proposal, and they actually formed a company called Algalco to push this technology forward. As far as I know, the company actually didn't do that much with it, and it's still kind of lurking in the background. And finally, it was picked up by Santa Cruz University in California in 2022 when they proposed the same system but using nanoparticles of the same alloy. Now, the beauty of it is the gallium isn't actually used up. You can reclaim the gallium and reuse it and reuse it and reuse it. It's only the aluminium and the water that are used up. The second way relies on a patent by a chap called Francois Corniche. This was actually tested by BMW in 1981 and found to work exactly as the inventor said it would from a 14-volt supply. Now, for some reason after that, the whole thing lapsed. The patent was unpaid, and of course it's now out of date, and the inventor, well, he disappeared off the face of the earth. Now, conspiracy theorists will love this one, and for sure, my thoughts about it are a little more prosaic. It is tremendously difficult to get a patent into production. People think you have a patent, it's a doorway to millions. It's not. 95% of patents never see the light of day. And the 5% that do, getting from prototype to market is such an uphill struggle. The bulk of patents never appear for really simple prosaic reasons. Not a conspiracy. However, there was one attempt at a replication as far as I know of, and that was in South Africa, where the device was built exactly in accordance with the patent specifications and again was supposed to be shown to work. And it's a very simple device. It's a coil of aluminium wire that's fed into a water tank at a steady rate. The high voltage is then passed down it, which causes the end to spark off, exposing the aluminium, and the aluminium then reacts with the water, delivering hydrogen and aluminium oxide as the waste product at the bottom. Of course, aluminium oxide is what the refiners use to make aluminium, so you can ship that right back to the refinery. Now, it's a truly inventive system that I think deserves a great deal more looking at. Of course, all of this has got everybody very much more excited, and it's become an intense area of research over the past couple of years, with different alloys being suggested, including indium and tin and even bismuth, to create alloys with exactly the same effect. And just this month, a new paper came out where the aluminium is being activated by the addition of nitrogen that is showing an improvement over previous systems. Now, to a degree, of course, it's arguable whether this is an aluminium energy source or a water energy source, because the water also gets used up to produce the hydrogen. Whichever it is though, it does bring the whole idea of a hydrogen car very much closer, and it's very exciting. But I don't think we should lose sight of the patent that we looked at here. That could well be a way forward for people investigating their own systems. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and please do remember to like and subscribe.